and my family to preserve our way of life. The options, you asked me a question. The options I have are vast in what we can do with this property. We can hold, turkey shoots, and we can do seasonal venues without. I almost feel that it's the only way I can really meet my neighbors is make them mad at me. We don't really see them that much. I don't see them come and go, and I don't ask them where they're going. They're Americans, and they've fought for what they, and their family has fought for what they've got today. But I give them the same right as I would like from you, is to be able to utilize my property for the best way I see fit. And if you've been down to my property, you see my property is in better shape than it was when I bought it. That's a fact.
That's all I have for right now.
Mr. Bob, questions at this time?
Yes.
Question.
Mr. Thompson, how many acres do you actually own over there? Because I know this parcel is...
I have 85 total acres there, and over in the project behind it, I own another 26 lots over on Julian Street and Mason Street.
Okay. Well, we're talking about this area right there.
This particular property here is 85 acres.
85 acres. Okay. And your house in that locale is there's a pond behind your house, if I remember right.
Correct.
And it goes down a slight hill, and the area you're talking about is down in that lower area.
Yes, sir. When we got married, when I married my wife there, the venue was to come out on a patio. The area inside was set up for receiving, of course, the bride and groom, separate rooms, of course, and then a facility inside of that to house a large amount of people inside. I mean, the basement alone is about 4,000 square feet. So it's not like everybody's going to be standing outside in the backyard or fishing in the pond. It's designed to have a venue of going in and out. It's not designed to be all in the backyard. When we've had parties there before, we've had bands, karaoke's. It's no different than any, other than a fact of how many we're asking for. It's no different if one of my neighbors were to have a party this weekend, one neighbor would have a party next weekend. It's the same. I have no control over what they do.
Okay. Going back to the issue with the sheriff's office, I guess the main thing was with traffic was so that, and also the amount of folks, so you had some control if there was happened to be a rowdy person there or whatever. But also, I mean, is that a fair statement? Or
would we have a routing person?
No. If the reason you spoke with the sheriff and you agreed to have police presence there is in case there were somebody to get rowdy or
Absolutely, yes. I thought you said routing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, the police presence was set in place by the Planning Commission not only to get people on and off the property if it became a large caravan for some reason, although I don't ever foresee that. The second was to be on site for noise violations if it was to exceed whatever octave that is supposed to be. And also, I would want them there to make sure that my place didn't get tore up, and to keep the peace. Because that way, if we have law enforcement there, they will certainly be able to check the volume level, and I would have them as a witness, more or less.
Okay. So basically, the main reason for the Planning Commission was in case there was a large group, there'd be some traffic control. Was mainly the reason.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Sealy, questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I first want to visit the parking because I see the lines drawn on here, and I understand that it's all grass. And I understand as wet as it is right now, that if you parked 75 cars, which I think could barely fit on what you're showing on the drawings that I have, you'd have a real problem.
I would agree with you to a certain extent, unless the soils out in Caroline County or in that particular area, they're pretty hard on top. It does take quite a bit of penetration to to make it muddy. Certainly not the fields across the street where they're plowed up on a daily, on a yearly basis and made them soft and so on and so forth. I would also direct your attention at Ducks Unlimited, if you know where the Rod and Gun Club is, off of 609 on the other side of 17. Same concept is there. I would direct you to the county fairgrounds in Fredericksburg, which is also a grass facility. I would say if you want to look at something to gauge that by, then you should probably look into that. And that seems to be growing very well. And I've been to the fair when it has rained profusely and still got in and out just fine.
I'm going to go back to making this a parking facility. Tell me what would potentially push you to turn this into something other than what it currently is?
I don't have any intent on turning it into a parking facility. I think we were pushed into that by the Planning Commission of what would you do, how would you handle this, and of course something had to be said. How would you handle the mud, the runoff, and so on and so forth? I don't anticipate it. I would imagine in a situation like that you would probably postpone it anyway, because you don't want 300 people, if you so to speak, walking around in high heels in 4 inches of mud in the backyard. So I don't see that being an issue.
Well, I think your event planner might have some issue, because if you're talking about somebody's wedding, I don't know that you can necessarily cancel that.
I can't say yes or no on that. I am not an event planner. I would just say, looking at it theoretically, you're not going to come stand in the middle of a field in high heel shoes.
So parking is something that you think would be facilitated just the way it is?
I can't see, if it changes in the future, if something comes up in the facility, and if this facility actually was to take off in any kind of larger fashion than it is right now, I just don't see it. I just don't see that many events happening there. This is certainly just a fight now for the rights of your property. But
well, just remember, when you say property rights, you're applying for a special exception, which is property rights. You are going beyond what is already zoned there.
Correct.
And everybody says, well, I'm applying, I want to use my property rights. This is still a special exception. You're asking for special permission beyond the rights that are already on the property that's there. Nobody's taken anything from you from the land that you purchased.
Correct.
It's rural preservation. It's still rural preservation. You can do everything listed under rural preservation that has always been able to be done. So when you say property rights, I get a little, you still have all the property rights you were granted that when you bought that property, nothing's changed.
Correct.
Just so we're clear about property rights.
That's good.
Because that's what they are.
Okay, just American rights. Let's go that way.
Say that again?
Just American rights. I just want the right to be able to, I'll work with you any way possible. The only thing I'm trying to say is that you have asked me what I'm going to do with the ground that you're going to park on.
Okay. And I do have to agree with the folks that live there. April, May, June, July, and August. That's, if you did 4 weeks, each one of those months, it would be, if you did one event every week, and that would be 20 events. And those are probably the highest use months there are in terms of outdoor events.
And vacations.
Which is the time that everybody else wants to be outside as well. What if your conditions were 8?
No, sir. 20 is what, that's what Mr. Gillespie's asked for, and that's what, 8. I can get 4 by right.
Okay.
So that, what have you gave me? You gave me 4. I can have a turkey shoot 14 times a year. A turkey shoot by right. Next door, shooting guns without even coming before the board. That's not a special exception. The only thing I'm asking for here is to, since I've put down law enforcement, I've changed it from 40 to 20. We've told you the road is in good condition. We've told you where the hospitals are. We've told you where the EMTs are. We've told you how many places you can go in and how many places you can go out. Parking on the grass You seem to have an issue with that.
It was just a question.
My only question with that is I have not seen any problem with that.
So, 20 is the bottom line. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Fincham? Would you come up?
Mr.
And,
Fincham?
Mr. Thompson, I don't want you to go too far.
If you just want to have a seat on the front row on the other side.
Question to you. During the public comments from the citizens, one gentleman, I believe is a gentleman on the end over here, mentioned several issues as to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, and of course we're part of that, whether we like it or not, we're part of that. How did the Planning Commission go about addressing those particular issues as far as the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, as far as the runoff into, and I did take the time to go over and look at this particular facility and look at Mr. Thompson's parcel of land and the neighboring areas around it. My wife and I took a drive over that one afternoon. So I do know about the pond behind it, and I do know what it looks like. How did the Planning Commission address those issues? Or do they say, we're not going to wear with it, we're going to stay wear with it?
The Chesapeake Bay Act is actually, the regulations are actually provisions of the Caroline County zoning ordinance. Therefore, it's our responsibility to administer and enforce those regulations under the zoning ordinance. So if there's land disturbance, if there's runoff that's generated by that development, any land development activity subject to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, we must review at the time of plan of development to ensure that stormwater calculations are addressed, the buffers are maintained, et cetera, et cetera. Those are handled during the site plan process, and it is our responsibility to enforce those regulations.
And Mr. Thompson knows all about what the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act requires as far as protecting the streams and protecting the pond, and as far as the runoff is concerned. It's not a cheap proposition. My other question is, I know in Lake Caroline, in the Lake Landor, where properties abut a body of water, they cannot disturb, the trees and the other things that are around this particular body of water. I just want to make sure Mr. Thompson fully understands, and you or someone in your office has fully explained to him as to what is required through the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, if there's anything required, what he's wanting to do. I would certainly think, because he has a beautiful lawn there, and I'm sure his wife, or he pays someone else to do all the land, the flower gardens and what have you, absolutely gorgeous. But if he disturbs the grass and is going to put gravel down, there's got to be some impact on as far as the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act.
During the site plan process, there is...
My question to you is, and I understand during site plan process, does Mr. Thompson understand all of those conditions and concerns and issues that he will have to address if this is approved?
I think you need to pose that question.
Mr. Thompson, do you understand all of those issues that are around the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act that can get quite costly if this special exception is approved?
It would only come into play if I'm inside of a wetlands area on this particular Chesapeake Bay Act. According to the county, when I went down several weeks ago and got a outbuilding permit, I was required to have a zoning permit only because it is a farm. During that process, one of the questions I asked is how close I could be to the pond with this facility. And they said, due to the fact it's not in a wetlands area, it's a pond on a farm, that you could build almost all the way up to it. Now, they said 5 feet, but I didn't go along with that. But that was what was proposed to me at the time, is I could build this shed within 5 feet of the pond. So as far as the Chesapeake Bay Act goes, I am a registered and a licensed erosion and settlement because I have to be. I understand, and if there is something we need to do there, we have the equipment on the farm to do such tasks.
Okay. Mr. Fincham?
You can sit down.
Also, it was mentioned by one of the speakers that they understood Mr. Brown when he made his motion to say one citation and the permit or the special exception would be revoked. It's 3 in here, so I'm assuming that 3 is the number that Mr. Brown gave, or did we make a typo, or did we not?
The second sentence in paragraph 6 or condition 16 states that the Board of Supervisors retains the right to revoke the special exception permit as otherwise authorized by the zoning ordinance.
So you're
that
saying
was specifically added, I believe, to address concerns raised about enforcement. Okay. So obviously, if there are 3 or more, yes, that in and of itself is grounds for revocation. However, as with other use permits where the board has deemed a violation to occur of a sufficient magnitude to warrant revocation of the permit, the board has done that. I believe that provision was added as an attempt to address that concern.
All right, so what you're saying is there was some type of an agreement between Mr. Brown and the other Planning Commission members that he would not insist on 1, but that he would agree to 3 if another provision is put in here or another sentence was put in that condition saying that the Board of Supervisors had the right to revoke it at any time.
Based upon my reading of the minutes, that is how that issue was addressed.
Okay. I hope that addressed who I don't recall who brought that issue up. I think it was Mr. Snyder as to the issue. The 2-year renewal. I was under the impression that we had talked about a 1 year, or that they had, Mr. Thompson, in discussion with you tonight, just a few minutes ago, I understood you to say that it was already in here for a 1-year renewal.
I could gradually remember, but if 1 year will work for you, I certainly don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have any problem.
Okay. So that could be changed to a 1-year renewal if it is passed. And the other question I would ask to the event planner.
Ms. Gillespie?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Seeley asked Mr. Thompson if 20 was the absolutely drop-dead number that you would be, that you could live with. Is 20 the final number that you, as the event planner, could live with as far as events, if this is approved? I don't know how it'll go.
If this is approved, between a rock and a hard spot here. I would love to, right out of the gate today, say I've got 20 planned right now. Sure. Not a problem. But again, I am a startup small business. And while I do have projected business, I am being interviewed, and I have interviewed. I think financially, 20, because I would like an all-out marketing campaign when this is approved, to expose it to the public, to expose it to brides, to expose it to the vendors in Caroline County. I'd have to have yes, 20 would have to be the minimum.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a couple of questions. Mr. Fincham, can you Can you help me with a couple of questions, please? And I guess, first of all, Mr. Thompson said that, because of the Chesapeake Bay, when he referenced the Chesapeake Bay, he said it was a farm. And I don't know, Mr. Thompson, if you saw the pictures we got from Ms. Gillespie, the event planner, but if this is indeed your house, in the middle of this beautiful lawn, which I'd like a piece of, well, I didn't see anything to eat on here to make it a farm. So this parcel is not farmed. Okay. Okay. Then Mr. Fincham, that particular question I'm posing to you is, the entire parcel is zoned agricultural or rural agricultural,
Rural preservation.
rural preservation. The farm designation means that there are different Chesapeake Bay rules or regulations which appear to be less stringent than normal?
There are certain regulations applicable to agriculture. There are certain regulations applicable to forestry. There are certain other regulations applicable to development.
So by definition, land zoned rural preservation is assumed to be a farm?
Not assumed to be a farm, no, sir.
So how does he have the farm designation? Mr. Thompson said it was a farm, and of course I believe anything anybody tells me, but because he said it was a farm, it's now qualified as a farm, or is there some procedure that goes through to make sure?
If, for example, you have property designated rural preservation that also happens to be part of a Chesapeake Bay preservation area, the more stringent of the two designations, RPA. Under state and county regulations, where if you were developing or I were developing that property for residential, commercial, or industrial purposes, then pursuant to the Chesapeake Bay regulations, you have to keep a buffer of 100 feet landward of your RPA features. So if you have a stream or a pond that is designated as an RPA, then you have to maintain a buffer of 100 feet from the edge of that water body.
And this one is designated an RPA, right?
I would have to double check. I believe it is, yes.
Okay.
If you are agriculture, you're actually allowed with certain BMPs to reduce that buffer.
Best management practices.
Yes,
okay.
With an approved plan. So yes, there are different regulations between an agricultural use and some other type of development of a piece of property. But they are all subject to their respective provisions of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act.
Okay, I mean, it's a minor part of my decision making, but I'd like to just clear it up. I'm not sure I understand how you can have a parcel of land that's rural preservation, cut out 10 acres, build a real nice house on it, and then say it's a farm. I just don't understand that and just how the process works. And it really is going to, the only real impact is it goes back to the Chesapeake Bay regulations, how far it can go, what it can do with the water, which is another issue altogether. But the fact that you got a house, I can't see anything to eat on that property, it's a farm. I don't know how that works. And I take it you do.
Notwithstanding the designation or assertion that this is a farm, with respect to the development of the site, when they come in, if the board approves this special use permit, it will be treated as a development of that site and subject to the 100-foot buffer requirements specified in our Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area.
It
is not a farm.
Okay.
It is a special events facility.
Okay. Then that's kind of fine. I understand that. The major point I have is Mr. Thompson said, and I think I talked to Mr. Thompson about it before he called me. I don't even remember when, a month or so ago. But anyhow, by right, he has the ability to do this. He said 4 times, and is that right to you? 4 times?
Well,
all right. Let's do it hypothetically. Hypothetically. I've got a house. I don't have 40 acres, but I got a house. I got 8 kids. They all want to get married next year. Can I have my 8 kids get married in my house all next year? I really don't have 8 kids, just so you'll know. But can they all get married next year at my house by right?
If they're your children, yes. There's nothing in our ordinance that would preclude you from having a wedding on your property for you or your children.
All right, they're my nieces and nephews. That's still family? I remember I was the one who extended family subdivision anyhow. Okay, they're friends of mine, no relation at all. I can do as many as I want?
We've actually had this discussion, not with Mr. Emerson, but with other members of the county attorney's office related to other issues. Mm-hmm. The simple use of your property, saying somebody else could use it for a certain type of use, it's not an easy yes or no answer. There are situations where arguably the use could still be considered a special events facility. The definition of special events facility does not say that it has to be for pay or for rent. So in some situations, the mere use of a piece of property multiple times, whether it's 2, 3, 5, 6, whatever, could in fact be deemed a special event facility under the ordinance because of the manner in which the property is allowed to be used.
So 4 is a number that we got from where? As in, he said he could do it 4 times a year by right.
I believe he was referencing, if I recall, the turkey shoot reference where it said you could use it 4 times a year.
No, he said 14. No. He said 14 for turkey shoot. He said 4 for, I was writing them down. He said 4 by right, weddings. Then he said he could do 14 turkey shoots. I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but there could be a wedding/turkey shoot, right? I'm just trying to, and you know, I'm not really trying to make light of it, but the fact is, how do I put my arms around that?
Let me try to answer it this way. There is a certain use that the board revoked several years ago.
I know that one well. If
the same discussion we had this same discussion with the county attorney's office about whether they charged or not. Could groups be allowed to use that property even without pay? So, and that's where we had the discussions that yes, it could still be deemed a special events facility by virtue of the manner in which that property was allowed to be used. So yes, even in those discussions, 4 times a year, in theory, could have been argued that that was a special events facility requiring a special use permit from the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, so the reality is the number 4 was not something that came from the Planning Commission at all. Is that right? I'm going to give you a chance. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that number specifically came from the Planning Commission. I don't think so.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Thompson, and just so, Mr. Thompson, as you come up, I'm gonna defend you and make sure Mrs. Thompson understands that all husbands are perfect. Okay, all the ladies laughed. All right, she was right.
Yes, he was.
Okay, where did the number 4 come from?